What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad.
No, Miguel.
This is our top 3 moments from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child, which I personally think is a much better film than A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4,
I
The
thought
Dream
it
Master. Yeah, Miguel doesn't fully agree with me. Many of you probably won't agree with me, but I think I have some valid reasons. I mean, again, it's not. Neither of them are like Academy Award winning films or anything. They're not. They're really not. But if you saw our previous video about Part 4, you know, I've said that this movie, Part 4 really tanks for me after Kincaid and Joey and Kristen are gone. And it's not even solely because of the fact that they're gone. Like, there were already some really, let's say, interesting creative choices made in terms of the writing in that movie, but it just, I don't know, it just tanks. Like, the writing is bad, the character development is bad. Like, basically, I'm only watching because of Freddy. I don't feel that way in this movie. I like Freddy in this movie. I don't like the way he looks. Really? The acting is good. Like, Robert Englund's portrayal of him is good, but the makeup seems cheaper in this. It doesn't seem as organic. It just seems kind of like they just stuck some paint on him, you know? Not quite as bad as Freddy's Dead, but it's still not great. I don't know. But yeah, the characters are fleshed out. The relationships between the characters, like the thing with Alice and her dad, I like that. Like, Alice is a much more likable character. Dan is a likable character. It felt like some of the character decisions in Part 4 were just like, that'll work. Sure, why not? Sure, you know. And I don't get that vibe with this. Like, I just, yes, it does some stupid things. I'm not wild about the whole baby demon Freddy thing. Like, that's stupid. But
and I think that's where a lot of us is kind of like dispense with ourselves in here.
Yeah.
Because again, as we talked about in the last film, we did not care about any rules whatsoever.
No.
And this one, we definitely did not care about any rules in this one.
Zero. Well, and the concept of, you know, I don't know the science behind it. If unborn babies like really dream, I don't know if that's true or not. But I don't know what they'd be dreaming. They've never experienced any life, so they're I don't know. But the concept of that is cool. Like, the concept of Freddy can come back because this baby is giving him power to do so,
sustenance, and
it's and it's, you know, as he says, soul food in at one point in this movie. But yeah, like, I'm not saying it's great. Some of the stuff Amanda Krueger says, I'm like, okay, stop talking. Like, you're it's cool idea, terrible execution.
I find it so funny though that, like, I mean, like, Miss Krueger has been around since, like, Saxton has been around, right? Or was that
I don't know if that was technically supposed to be her. It was just a nun. It was just a nun that was leading around. We never really got a big explanation. It was just kind of a nun that was leading Neil around, pushover Neil, and just like, I don't know. That was one of the stranger parts of that movie, but I don't know. I think this is just a more well-written movie in terms of the characters. So
let's talk about our highlights, dude.
Yeah, there are things I don't like, but what was your first? Again, if you've seen the last 4 videos we've done, these aren't necessarily in any type of order. It's not a ranking of our top 3 moments. It's just, we're just naming our 3 favorite moments from the film. Yeah. So, Miguel, what was one of your favorite 3 moments from Part 5?
My favorite were
babies. Dream babies.
Right. My first one was
babies.
In relation to the movie, was Robert Englund's scene in the asylum. I thought it was a really cool scene to have Robert Englund not in Freddy get up, just being his weird, evil.
We saw that quite a bit.
Staring. Yeah, I mean, we saw him probably 2 times. I think 2 or 3 times.
I think it was more than that. It was maybe like 3, 4, possibly 5 times that he
Yeah.
had like small cameos as something else in this
Which
movie.
I thought was, pretty rad, all things considered. So, but the asylum scene, obviously, with Allison, having that little um, crazy dream sequence where she's kind of Miss Krueger and she's kind of not. And whenever she was locked in the group with all the insane asylum prisoners, like just to have Freddy just out of nowhere, like it was one of those moments where like the camera is like peeling back from like all the people that you're seeing, and then typical viewers probably would not never have guessed that that was Robert Englund if they didn't know
Right.
what he looked like. So I thought that was a cool scene for like fans to see to catch a glimpse of and be like, oh shit, like there's Robert. So like
that was definitely
and
like a ooh, like that.
yeah,
You
it's
know what I
definitely one
mean?
of those cool cameos. Yeah.
Yeah, the Leo DiCaprio getting off the couch.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a pretty cool moment. I actually considered putting the opening dream sequence after the shower thing when the shower fills up with water and she falls into like the black void or whatever Alice
yeah,
falls
yeah.
into. Like, and
Bruh,
then
like really though, let's be honest, dude. Let's be honest real quick. Every single time I saw them falling into like some that weird like fleshy abyss, is 100% a uterus. I think it's 100% like a body part, like in going into it, and then
that's
like
not what
you
I
see.
thought you were about to say.
Oh yeah,
I,
no.
of all the places my brain thought you were about to go, saying they're falling into a uterus was not where
Well,
I
because
expected
the
you to
next
go.
scene that we got was like Freddy like right next to the baby, which again, not one of my favorite scenes, but definitely one of those scenes where I was like,
Well,
whoa.
okay, so like I considered putting the asylum thing in. My first one was actually it came a little bit later. It was when Freddy actually returns after and at this point she's had a couple of dreams and it's after we get the weird sequence when Amanda gives birth. I don't like the idea that Amanda I think it I know it was for dramatic effect. They had to have little demon Freddy like slithering around like it's like a knockoff of what they did with the chest burster from Alien. Like it's the
It
same
really
concept
was.
except it was like a natural birth. But I don't know, when I think it would be more effective the idea that she gave birth to him and then he grew up to become the child killing pedophile that he became. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's weird though that the idea that he was born this weird like Quasimodo like freakish creature. You know what I mean? Like that's strange to me. That's one of the things I don't like about the movie. And then the actual again, this is kind of like what we talked about with part 4 with Freddy's Resurrection, where it's like it's half cool, it's half dumb. The little mini demon Freddy slithering into the church or the chapel or whatever, where Alice defeated him at the end of part 4, and the whole like in their fight sequence at the end, when he slithers into the body and she's like, "No, you can't, not again," you know, whatever, and he's resurrected. Like that was kind of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But Freddy's actual resurrection, when he stands up, it's a boy, like that was cool. And specifically the moment when, you know, after he comes back, he's kind of like still becoming his old form. So he's like, he's not fully himself yet. You know, he looks weird. After he says it's a boy, she says, you know, you can't come back. I locked the door on you. And then he pops up behind her and he puts his hand on her belly and he says, well, I found the key. And then she runs or whatever. And as he's holding her belly, that's when his mom bursts through the door. And Amanda Krueger says, your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again. Blah, 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 blah. You know, and there's this little confrontation. And Freddy's like, oh, you know, and he looks all pissed. Bro, Freddy was wild for looking at his mother and saying, we'll see, bitch. We'll see. I was like, okay.
Pretty heavy shit, ain't it?
All right, man. You're talking to your mom, but okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment, like, kind of stupid, yes, but also kind of very, very Freddy moment. like also kind of fun at the same time. So that was my first one. It's not like it's not one of my favorite scenes from the franchise or anything, but it's just
Hmm.
kind of like, okay, that was kind of like he's just being a dick at this point, and I don't know, I like it. Everything from It's a Boy to when he's got his hand on her belly and she's like, well, I found the key, and then calling his mom a bitch, like it's cool.
It
It's a
was just
fun
wild
movie.
for Freddy to come out and really be
It's
like
just
out
a
there
fun,
swinging and doing
it's
shit.
just yeah, the dude comes out swinging from just from I don't know, from the get go. It's awesome. But what was your first moment from part 5?
I think so. It's going to be a kill, and I think there
Mm,
were some decent kills in this one. Well, I think there were only like
there,
three. There were only three, right?
yeah, but the ones we got were decent.
They
I
were
think you
pretty
and I will
good.
probably have one, at least one that's the same.
I would say, would it be Dan's death? Because that's definitely,
Dan,
yeah.
Dan,
Dan was pretty rough.
Dirty Dan. Yeah.
Dirty Dan. Like at this
It's
point, like we're getting really good quips from Freddy,
yes.
and like we've already gotten like some pretty good quips from Freddy, but I think that he was really having some fun with some
Oh
of
yeah.
these because whenever we have Dan driving and him getting trapped into the truck at first, and him just being absolutely ragdoll throughout the entirety of the
Hmm.
truck sequence, and next thing you know, we get Freddy like taking the control of the wheel, taking the bottle, taking a little sip of the wine, be like, or just like, "Yeah, terrible year," or something like that, or
I
it was just
love
such a
that
stupid
moment.
line.
Uh,
And after that, Freddy like he uses the wine as acid to cut off his arm, only to stop the
oh,
truck
it's so
dead stop to
wild.
throw Dan out of
Oh
the
man.
window. And it's just one of those moments where I was like, Freddy doesn't fucking care. He would
No,
literally rip his own
not at
arm off
all.
just for
Yeah.
the bit.
Yeah.
And obviously, Dan wakes back up, takes the bike instead. And then that's when we get I got the need for speed, Freddy, or something like that. And we get
It
Dan the fucking body motorcycle.
whatever that was, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is actually one of my favorite dream sequences of the entire franchise. And you know, um when as soon as this is like I was trying to think of an analogy for this. Like it's almost like when a good comedian, like a really good stand-up comedian, keeps being like a zinger. Like you think the joke is over, and then there keeps being more. Like it keeps it, and it's good, like in a really good way. This dream sequence is kind of like that. Like every time you think, oh, it's over, it gets worse, and then every
Yeah.
time you think, oh, okay, there's no way it can get worse, it still somehow
It
gets
gets
worse.
worse. Yeah.
That whole sequence. But like Dan, when he hears his mom on the radio and he's like, he's becoming an ungrateful, unmanageable dickly, blah, 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 blah. And then she says like, ever since he was seduced by that slut whore Alice and stuff, and he's like, mom, and then Freddy's on the radio with him and stuff. It's like he's being bound by seatbelts, like you said, and then he looks over and Freddy's driving, and like he's having fun with it. Freddy's like, I swear, this is the side profile we get of Freddy. Like he looks
Like he's really
happy.
enjoying the drive.
Like
Yeah.
he looks like he's enjoying it, and then he takes a sip of it. I don't know why I find that so funny. When he takes a sip of that champagne and like pukes it up all over the dashboard, that absolutely wrecks me. Like it's stupid boy humor, but I think that is the funniest.
Stupid.
It's like the sound he makes in the face, it's so funny. Um, but
Like
yeah,
this had
like
to be improv by
oh,
Robert Englund.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I guarantee you he was having fun with this,
Hmm.
But then like when he rips his arm off and uses it as the seatbelt, buckle up, Dan, or whatever, he's thrown from the car and you think, oh, okay, that's it. But then he
Yeah.
gets on the bike and you're like, oh my God. And that's when we get, it's not even like you mentioned the zingers and the one-liners. It's not just the fact that he's using one-liners. It's like the way he says it, Like he
Hmm.
says it to be a douche. Like
Yeah.
Hunter, when he says this boy feels the need for speed,
Yeah.
stuff like that, or when he tells him better not dream and drive or whatever. But yeah, that's nasty when he becomes like part of the motorcycle and like he says, or what does he say? At one point, the fuel line like digs into his calf, and he goes fuel injection or something like that.
Like Freddy is just
Oh
there to
man.
just like put
Oh,
more
he's
salt in
a
the wounds with his.
menace. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
he's
almost
straight menace.
yeah.
Oh
It gives me Art the Clown vibes, where like he's just like continually having fun and
yes,
playing with his victims.
yes,
But
yes.
obviously, Art is taking that from Freddy. But still,
Right,
it's for those of you who've seen like Terrifier 1 and 2.
right.
Um, it's kind of similar, except Art doesn't talk, and
Yeah.
Freddy is just all talk. It's just that just makes them all the best.
If you're in Freddy's dream, you better be ready to get shit talked like
Yeah,
endlessly
yeah,
for you. Like it's not gonna stop. Well, here's what to cap it. Like the dream sequence itself is great, but to cap it all off, it's just like it's a double zinger. When the wreck happens, when he actually like wakes up from the dream and he's facing the semi and the wreck happens, the car is engulfed in flames, right?
yeah.
And it's right in front of the diner where Alice works. So like Alice runs out of there, she's distraught because of what just happened, and the dude hops out of the semi wearing a fedora and the red and green sweater and slacks and whatever, and he's all bleeding out of sight. He's like, I didn't see him anywhere. And, he's freaking out. She's in shock because she's looking at Dan's truck just in flames and destroyed. She knows he's dead. They were wild for making her look at his dead, shriveled up body in the fire. And when he goes, hey Alice, want to make babies? I was like, and then 10 minutes later, she finds out she's pregnant.
Pregnant, yeah. That's so
Like,
fucked.
bro, you guys are wild for this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just crazy. That whole sequence from the time Dan falls asleep till the time she finds out she's pregnant. I'm just like, I feel like I just got punched in the face 9 times, and I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah, yeah.
It's that whole sequence. It's arguably like maybe one of the best sequences of the entire movie. Look at me, I got the Trump hands.
No, of all the franchise, I'd
Some
say it's probably
dreams,
one of my favorite.
not all dreams. Some dreams are big. Some dreams are
the best
small.
dream.
Great, but not
Yeah.
making a political statement. Just making a joke. Take a joke, people. What what was your my last one? I guarantee you, you're not. There's no way anybody's gonna have this, and it may be a cop out. But real quick, what's your third favorite moment?
It's gonna be the third kill that we've had, because I don't consider Freddy's death a kill, but
Yeah.
it would be Mark's death.
Mm-hmm. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I went back and forth.
Did you?
I went back and forth whether I would include this or include the thing. I'm telling you, you're probably gonna think it's lame, but there's a reason.
Yeah, I get it, but with this one, I thought it was one of those moments where it just it felt very cartoonish, like very like cartoonish, like
Oh yeah.
almost like superhero like cartoon level like sitcom, and
Purposely over the top.
purposely over the top, exactly. And we got so many cool scenes with Mark's like superhero coming out of nowhere and fighting Freddy, and then Freddy becoming like super Freddy, and then like it all like turning like into like drawings of Mark's life, and then all the way up to Mark's death, where Freddy like makes Mark into like a piece of paper and just slashes him,
Yeah.
and then all you see is just like the colorful Mark just go all the way down to black and white, and that's like technically him like
Yeah.
bleeding out. Like it's like that entire scene was just really not well, I wouldn't say well put together, but just like really well done in regards to like over the top, and just really giving us all the budget in this one particular scene. So yeah, that's definitely my third like favorite part of this film, and especially with the idea that like after all was said and done, Mark dies because the whole like his whole like setup just collapsed on him. What
Right.
makes me laugh about some of these deaths are
Well,
how over the top.
that's not entirely true though, because the paper scene when he turns in that I was gonna mention like that's one of the things that makes that whole sequence so cool is like he becomes the paper and Freddy's cutting the paper and when you
Hmm.
see his you don't even see his whole like dead body, but you see his hand fall and
Yeah,
his arm is just like slashed. I
yeah.
mean, you could imagine like his whole body is just slashed. All so
Hmm.
yes, like the thing falling on him probably is what like did it, but I don't know.
It's
I
probably
feel like
worse under that pile. Well, here's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Apparently, these some of these scenes were cut out by the MPA because it was
Mm.
so brutal.
Yeah, I
So
remember hearing that. Yeah,
that entire scene where
you're
Freddy
right.
is
You're
just
right.
like hacking and slacking and slashing the Mark all up into bits and pieces.
Yeah, you're right.
Supposedly, that scene was supposed to be really gruesome, but the MPA was like, we got to cut that out.
Hmm.
So we got what we got, which is still a dope scene, but at the same time, boy, to
Right.
see what could have been like slashed around, yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
rough,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. It's funny. Do you ever like? It's funny to sit and think about the fact that like, think back to part one and part two. We had Freddy sinister, dark, evil beyond belief. Like when Nancy turns her back on him and says she's not afraid of him, he's like, you what? Like it's, and then we have like he's clawing his way out of Jesse's body, and he's doing all these really dark, evil, sinister things. And then 2 movies later, we have Freddy in black and white on a skateboard like this.
That is true. Yeah, I forgot
Like,
about that.
do you ever think about like that? Just that downfall. It's so
I wouldn't
it's
even say
wacky,
it. I
man.
wouldn't even call it a
Not
downfall.
not even a downfall. That journey
Yeah,
from that version of that character to where we end up. It's just
yeah.
it's crazy, man.
It's a definite full 360 evolution is what we got right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So here's okay to wrap this up. Here's my third moment, and I went back and forth. I actually went back. Here's how I did this. When I rewatched part five, I watched the whole movie, and I actually went back and went to this moment and watched the last half of the movie again because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna include this. I almost included Mark's death because that is a really cool sequence with the black and white and the cartoons and all of that stuff. Like that's really neat. But I included the moment. First of all, think about my criticism of part four with the poorly written characters, and I just didn't feel connected to any of the characters. This movie, I felt bad for Alice, like in what she's going through. Like she was in a really good relationship. She's at a good point in her life with her dad and her friends. Like she's got friends that didn't make it out of the last film. Um, she's having weird blue light sex with Dan, like at the beginning of the movie. But like things seem good for her, and I kind of genuinely like her character. And then all this is happening, and Dan dies, and she finds out she's pregnant, and Dan's not going to be there. She's going to be a single mother. Like, in addition to the Freddy thing, she's going through a lot in this movie, and I kind
Hmm.
of feel for her character, and it's fairly well written, like compared to what we've had in the past. Again, it's not The Notebook. It's not winning an Academy Award anytime soon, but like it compared to what we had in the previous film. One of my favorite moments in this entire movie is when, excuse me, not Kristen, when Alice and Mark come downstairs and Dan's parents, the Jordans, are there talking to her dad, and they're kind of beating around the bush and whatever. And Dan's mom finally says, "We were wondering what you were going to do with the baby." And they're there to try to convince Alice to let them take
Oh, you
custody of the
yeah.
baby.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's a very dad thing of me to pick, isn't it? And and they kind of have that little like confrontation moment. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel for Alice in that moment, and I honestly I didn't even think about it from a parent perspective, but like
I don't even think
it
like
just.
CPS was a thing back then. So like for
But
the
also
doctor just
they
to call and just make that concern.
yeah,
I mean,
that's bro violated 25 different things for
yeah,
for
like that's
HIPAA and OSHA.
100%
Like
HIPAA. Well, I mean,
yeah,
that's where it's kind of like I don't know child laws during the fucking
yeah,
80s. So,
and why would he call them? What? Why call
yeah,
them? They're irrelevant in the situation, essentially. You
yeah.
know. Not that grandparents are irrelevant, but I digress. But yeah, I don't know. I've always liked that moment. Like when I think of this movie, that's one of the moments I think of because it's just like, man, she's really going through a lot, and it's a reminder. That scene is a reminder that like, hey, the writing in this movie is so much better than what we got in part 4. You know what I mean?
I
Like
mean,
it
if
just
that's what
it
you're calling it, like if
feels.
that moment right there is what you're saying is what did the writing over the top, then that's a
No,
yeah.
no, 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 no. It's not just that moment, but like overall, it just
Hmm.
feels. I don't know. That moment held a lot of weight in the movie, and it was like like it just. There's just something about it I like. I've always enjoyed that moment, And Mark kind of like walks out in solidarity with her, and her dad sticks up for her. Bro, her dad is a gem, an absolute gem in part 5
Yeah, he's a lot
compared to
nicer.
Nancy's vodka chugging mom in part 1. Like
How about that?
her,
Alice's dad was no better, and Dream
he
Master.
wasn't in part. He wasn't in Dream Master, but dude really cleaned himself up and became a good dude.
Hmm.
Like even the moment when they're sitting there like washing dishes or no, they're unloading groceries, and after they find out she's pregnant, and she says, "Are you disappointed in me?" And he's like, "No, I kind of hope it's a boy." And he like turns it into a positive thing. I'm like, dude,
Hmm. What a dad. Good
You're
job.
you're you're doing it, man. You're a good dad.
Yeah.
So I like that moment. I don't know. It's nothing crazy. It's not some crazy death scene. It's not some awesome Freddy scene. It's not some action packed bloody goodness. It's just it's a nice emotional anchor in a point in the franchise where the story kind of, let's just be honest with ourselves and call a spade, doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like we're there
Yeah.
to watch Freddy
Just moment.
blow people away. Like that's
Yeah.
basically what we're sitting in the seat for. And I was like, man, that's a nice moment. This is a nice little storyline we got going here. I dig it. So that's my third favorite moment. Call it a cop out if you will, but it's
Nah,
I
not that.
like it.
Not necessarily a cop out. It's a very niche moment. I would
It
say.
is. It is. And
Yeah.
I know it's a moment that not many people would ever list as one of their favorites from the movie, but
Hmm.
it's one that I've got a little bit of a appreciation for. So, listen, I love this movie. I really really enjoy Part 5 quite a bit. So comment down below. Let us know your favorite moments from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. It's not perfect. The ending is weird. The ending of this movie gets very strange. The whole thing with the little boy Jacob and it being her son, like she's seeing in her dream, and like Freddy comes
Like,
out of her, and like
yeah.
I don't know, it's weird. It's not, the ending is not my favorite like climax sequence between. I will say the Maniacs grabbing Freddy and pulling him down is pretty cool, but they wasted
Yeah.
that should have been like the ending, like the Maniacs take. I mean, Freddy is born because they got her pregnant, but the Maniacs grabbing Freddy and pulling him back in. That would have been a cool ending. But bro
I
just
agree.
pops up after
With like his
he just
broken arm and just like
yeah, he just pops up after that and I'm
yeah.
like, okay, that was a complete waste, but
Yeah.
so yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but there are things about it that I like quite a bit. So let us know your favorite moments from part 5. We will be back with Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare. We'll be back with Freddy's Dead, and then we will move into some Halloweens after Freddy versus Jason. Yeah. We'll hit
I think
Freddy's Dead
so,
and
yeah.
Freddy versus Jason. So again, we're in the middle of our Oktoberfest event, all Halloween horror-ish content all month long, which we do anyways, but special because we're putting a label on it.
Oh yeah.
Not really. We are getting like 3 videos a week, which we don't typically do, so that's pretty awesome. Be sure to leave this one a like. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at LTM Podcast KY. Join the Facebook group, Let's Talk Movies YouTube channel -- community page in the Facebook app. Have a great rest of your day, week, month, year, and decade and century. It's always spooky season here on this channel, and 1, 2, Freddy's coming.
For you. Ooh.
That's it. He's coming. All the time.
Be gross.
For you. Have a good one, guys. See you. Bye.